A special human being entered our universe 100 years ago. His name is Ernest Karl Wetzig. This is the story of his life. Before his first birthday, his father Karl, who was an ophthalmologist on the front lines in World War I, was badly injured during active duty and did not survive. Then tragically, 6 months later, his mother Dora was killed in an auto accident. Ernest was taken in by a foster family in Berlin, Harry and Tosca Schillow. He was fortunate to have a foster family that cared and loved him. Within a few years, they moved about 2 hours away to Leipzig, Germany, where he would live out his youth. Harry and Tosca wanted to adopt Ernest, but they had an older biological son named Gunther that had his own objections, and Ernest was never officially adopted. But he was still treated like their own son. Harry and Tosca were what we would now refer to as an upper middle class family, and Ernest was well clothed, fed, and even went to private school. He was raised with a high standard of living in a country decimated by war. He never had a dog, but his parents bought a sheep ram for their own reasons. Ernest grew deeply attached to it, like any boy would feel for his dog. It was his pet. He did not know the true purpose for the sheep, and one day the sheep seemingly disappeared. He cried for several days, but then quickly moved on. Ernest is resilient. He had an independent streak from birth, and this combined with his natural intellectual curiosity about the world would always drive him past disappointments and towards adventure and a full life. At the age of 24, Ernest wanted to learn Spanish and experience the South American culture. Through the help of a friend, he secured work in Montevideo, Uruguay, with an import company. In the summer of '37, he left Germany and went to England, where he left Europe by ship on a 14-day sea excursion to Uruguay, planning to stay there for just 1 year. As Ernest had anticipated, the South American culture was alive with warmth and festivities. With Hitler in Germany increasingly becoming socialistic and a threat to Europe, Ernest's analytical side told him that war would be looming and that Germany would not be the best place to return to. He decided to stay in Uruguay. He was right. What he did not know at the time was that his foster family would eventually be placed in Nazi concentration camps. Their maid's boyfriend was loyal to the SS and learned of how they despised the regime and essentially blew the whistle on them. Although they were released after the war, Harry died shortly after from malnutrition. Tosca passed away in a home for the indigent. As a result, Ernest would never see Harry and Tosca again. To this day, Ernest has great ambivalence about being a German, as he feels great embarrassment to be associated with the travesty brought on to the world by Nazi Germany. He gave up his citizenship to become a citizen of Uruguay. He lived and worked in Uruguay for the next 9 years, learning the language and enjoying their culture from all angles. While in Montevideo, Ernest met a woman at a dance named Dora. She was British but born in Uruguay. He fell in love, and they married. In 1946, Ernest decided to continue his life adventure and further his career by traveling to New York City via Boston. Dora didn't want to leave her family and therefore had no interest in going to New York with Ernest. So Ernest went alone. He was able to make this trip because he secured positions as a purchasing agent for 4 separate South American companies, with each company paying him $100 per month retainer. This made for a pretty good living back in the 40s. He was one of the few foreigners that customs allowed into the U.S. without a sponsor, because he was recognized as a working professional. In the 40s, 5,000 miles was too long a distance for any relationship, and Ernest and Dora decided to divorce after 6 years of marriage. They had no children. With World War II just ending, the economy had changed, and his employment contracts were expiring. Ernest decided to drive across the country to Reno, Nevada, to finalize his divorce. Along the way, he decided he would also have an adventure traveling throughout the West Coast. During his stay in Reno, he met a woman named Nancy Memser, who was also there for divorce and was also from New York City. They were attracted to each other as she had a free spirit similar to his own that he still remembers to this day. They spent the next 4 weeks driving a whirlwind tour of the western United States, including Canada and Mexico. Along the way, Ernest fell in love with Southern California and also developed an attachment to Nancy. They considered the possibility of a future together. However, Nancy was from a strict Jewish family that did not approve of their daughter marrying a Gentile. So their relationship abruptly ended upon the insistence of Nancy's father. Once again, through the heartbreak, Ernest kept moving forward, seeking love and adventure in his life. Ernest secured new employment as the export manager for a Swiss company in the silk trade. Ernest was always a gregarious man and sought out new friends and activities. He joined a Swiss ski club for adventure. This changed the direction of his life. Through the ski club, Ernest met Helga Herzl, who had recently immigrated to the U.S. from Switzerland. Helga was a jeweler by trade and worked in the Diamond District in Manhattan. However, in order to expedite her ability to speak English, she also worked in a Brooklyn hospital as a nurse and lived in Kew Gardens in Queens, New York. Ernest and Helga dated for only a few weeks, but quickly found a deep connection. As Ernest himself recalls, it was love at first sight. Even though Ernest liked New York City, he knew that the West Coast would be a better place to raise a family. So he talked Helga into driving out there with him so that she could see for herself what it was like. They took a scenic tour of the Southwest as Helga experienced the vast beauty of America for the first time. When they reached Las Vegas, Nevada, they decided to get married. From Nevada, they continued on to visit Los Angeles and experience Southern California together. Helga liked the beauty of Southern California, along with the mostly warm days and, of course, the ocean. This trip set precedents for a lifetime of travel together, as they would take significant vacations every other year for the rest of their lives. On the way back to New York City, they decided to visit Peter Powell, a friend of Ernest, who also happened to be a minister. Peter felt that their wedding in Las Vegas was not a proper wedding and insisted that they stay through the weekend so that on Monday he could properly marry them in his church with the church secretary and his family as their witnesses. As a result, Ernest married Helga for the second time in a month and then returned to New York. They spent several years beginning their marriage in Kew Gardens. Ernest met Helga's father, Max, a renowned European opera star with a wonderful spirit similar to Ernest, and his wife, Melita, who was an opera teacher and his coach. Ready to raise a family, they deliberated on where they would live, New York versus California. The decision was not difficult. California would be their home. Ernest and Helga settled in Hollywood, California, and quickly gave birth to their first child, Marjorie Edith. Ernest felt a great sense of pride in having his first child and loved her dearly. About a year later, they purchased a house in the Hollywood Hills for $18,500. Shortly after, Helga gave birth to Ingrid Renee. This house would be Ernest and Helga's home for the next 45 years. Their home was a focal point of the neighborhood, as Helga was always sharing her European culture and food with most of the neighbors. And there was always a warm sense that their door was always open to everyone. To support his growing family, Ernest continued to work for major companies in the exporting trade. He was linguistically gifted and still speaks 6 languages fluently and a little bit of Russian. This was of great value and secured his career. He traveled all over the world representing JBL and Harman Kardon, visiting 60-plus countries. He has taken trips literally around the world 4 times. Ernest is also proud to be a citizen of 3 countries. There were always 2 sides to Ernest: the loving father and grandfather, and the independent adventurer. Throughout his business travels, he would often be gone for long periods of time, and his daughters missed their father, as he would sometimes be away for weeks at a time. To make up for it, he would always bring home small mementos to them from the places he had visited. He would also take road trips to travel with his daughters. These were his ways of conveying his love to compensate for the time away. Ernest didn't really retire until he was around 70 years old. He actually retired 3 times, but each time his employer would ask him to return. He would return as he loved his work and the adventure of travel. After his retirement, his focus was on enjoying his family that was growing and maturing. He loved keeping abreast of world news and read the Wall Street Journal religiously each day. He listened to his music in his beloved den and read his National Geographic magazines. And his true passion, continuing to travel throughout the world as he and Helga had done their entire lives, particularly through Europe. In 2004, when Ernest was 91 and Helga was 85, they finally agreed to sell their modest home and move to Oregon. Their daughter, Margie, along with her son Kevin, provided incredible help in their big move. They moved to Riverside Terrace, a semi-assisted living facility in Roseburg, Oregon, so that they would be closer to Margie's growing family and so that Margie could help them as needed. After living at the terrace for 4 years, Helga suddenly deteriorated, and on September 28th, in the early morning hours, Helga passed away with Ernest by her side. Today, Ernest continues to live in an apartment overlooking the South Umpqua River. He misses Helga dearly, but keeps busy with daily life. He also enjoys going out to dinner with his daughter, Margie, and son-in-law, Frank. Younger daughter, Ingrid Renee, who resides in Colorado, also visits him 4 times a year. At Riverview Terrace, he has also been befriended by a kind and loving woman named Ramona Saunders, who gives him additional care. Ernest has 9 wonderful grandchildren who visit when they can, and also has 10 great-grandchildren. His life is meaningful to them all. Ernest has always been a warm and generous man with great compassion and kindness. Ernest now also has the time to reflect on the wonderful memories of places and people that were part of the 100 years of his beautiful life. Happy 100th birthday, Ernest. Your friends and family are incredibly thankful for what you have contributed to our lives. We all love having you in our lives.